Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about the internet and the alt-right and the anti-social justice movement on the internet and how I think all of those things relate to each other and how it is all structured in my mind. I'm by no means an expert on the subject. I haven't done any formal research into these kinds of groups. I'm just going by what I have experienced over the past few years of being in touch with anti-SJW YouTube channels and forums and just what I've seen on the internet for probably hundreds of hours added up. This is prompted by an article that came out this week about Pewdiepie, the biggest channel on YouTube. The troubling content of YouTube's biggest star. Childish, offensive, and immensely popular. Pewdiepie made a video about this himself, or he mentioned this article in his video.
This article, to summarize, it sort of insinuates that me creating a book club is somehow a bad thing. That people should pay more attention to what I'm doing online, because who knows what he's gonna do next month. He might tell them to read Mein Kampf.
What I want to talk about is what constitutes the alt-right community of the internet, and who gets to define what the alt-right is. On YouTube in particular, the anti-social justice, anti-SJW community is huge. I'm just going by subscriber numbers and view numbers, but it seems to me to be a movement of several million people. I say it's huge by comparison to other internet communities, but I'll get into that. Within that bubble, which is several million people, there's a few thousand people who are alt-right. And those are people who call themselves alt-right, not what other people call them. These are people who watch these channels like Millennial Woes or Rage After Storm. These are openly racist YouTube personalities. And by racist, I mean they acknowledge race and believe that they're white nationalists, basically. They believe that the white race should have their own homeland with no other races allowed to live there. I'm not too familiar with what exactly that would entail or what they believe, so I apologise if I'm misrepresenting their argument, but that's what I understand to be alt-right. It involves white nationalism and particularly a belief in race as a meaningful concept and as a good judge of a community of people. The reason I've drawn the alt-right within this bubble of social justice is that all alt-right are also against social justice, as far as I can tell. None of them are feminists, for instance. They're not concerned with those things, and they're also against the people who are, as far as I understand it. But you've also got other communities within SJW, and some of them overlap with the alt-right. We've got MGTOW, which I've talked about in my other videos, and they're also anti-SJW because they're against feminism, for example. I'm not sure if MGTOW is bigger or smaller than the alt-right. I think it's of comparable size. Now, I've drawn these as mutually exclusive because there's no overlap between them, because the goals of the alt-right are at odds with the MGTOW philosophy. So these two communities are at odds with each other, and I'm not going to go too much into why that is, but I think it's important to remember that within anti-SJW, there is a lot of conflicting communities inside it that do not agree on these sorts of things. They don't agree on everything, and they are actually in conflict with each other. Where is Jordan Peterson in this, for instance? Some people who are outside of this community call him alt-right, but his beliefs and his lectures, what he says is at odds with the alt-right. He's specifically anti-identitarian, meaning that he's against any forms of judging people by any kind of group. He's an individualist. If we were to draw his audience into this diagram, I think what you'd see is among Jordan Peterson's audience is also the alt-right and MGTOW. So to draw Jordan Peterson's audience in here, we'd have to have a lot of anti-SJWs, some MGTOW, and some alt-right, and some who are none of the above, intersecting like that. So where does Pewdiepie come into all this? Well, if we were to draw Pewdiepie's following, we'd have to zoom out a lot and draw a very big bubble. Honestly, I have no idea how many of PewDiePie's audience are anti-SJW. I know there are some people on the alt-right who like him and who are secretly cheering him on as an alt-right sort of secret agent. How much, I don't know, but if I were to draw his bubble is bigger than all of anti-SJW. He gets so many views. But since he's not really a political channel, it's hard to even put him on this map. We could put him as a person on this map, and I suspect he might fall in this anti-SJW sphere as a person. Maybe he even read 12 Rules for Life, which I guess would put him in here. Is he alt-right? I don't think so. They think he is, but I think that's just wishful thinking. But his audience, if it was here, might look something like, I don't know, like this. I've never seen any evidence that PewDiePie has any MGTOW followers, but he's got so many that I expect he has some. So I'm going to cut through some MGTOW, I guess some alt-right, and some Jordan Peterson. I mean, this is really speculative. Him as a person probably lies, well, I haven't drawn it very well, but probably lies here. Possibly here. I don't think he's a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. He's never given any indication of that, but he could be. He might just be out here. He might just be doing his own thing and not be interested in politics at all, which is what he claims. But I find it hard to believe that he has absolutely no opinion about social justice culture. He's frequently talked about it and made jokes about it, kind of in a South Park sort of way, where he just sort of makes fun of stupidity indiscriminately, not according to political ideology. He just makes fun of everyone. I wouldn't call South Park an anti-SJW show. It's a satirical show. I highly doubt that he's in the alt-right proper. That's just by my definition. I'm here. I'm not MGTOW. I'm not alt-right. I'm a PewDiePie fan, so I guess I'll put myself here, actually. Probably haven't drawn this intersection big enough, but I think you understand what I mean just by the diagram. But from the outside looking in, people who are standing over here and just, they don't understand all of this, anti-SJW, MGTOW, alt-right. They're just looking at all of it. You know, these journalists, the person who wrote this Guardian article, all they see is, all of it is alt-right. Depending on who you ask, everyone who is against the social justice movement and against the radical left or the regressive left or whatever you want to call it is alt-right, because apparently the only thing you need to be right-wing is to be against the left, according to this philosophy. I don't believe that's true. I think there's certain philosophies and values that go along with being right-wing that aren't just opposing the left. But that's just my opinion. Of course, I'm going to say that because I'm in here and I don't want to be alt-right, and I'm not alt-right. But who gets to decide that? Is it me? Do I get to decide if I'm alt-right or not? Does the alt-right get to decide whether I'm alt-right or not? Definitely they would say I'm not. But if alt-right is defined by journalists and by the Joe Public over here and my mum, people who haven't been on the internet a lot and who aren't engaged in the anti-social justice community, if you could even call it a community, they don't know about these distinctions. They don't know the difference between being against Black Lives Matter and being against black people as a principle, or being against having white people and black people living together. To other people, it just looks like a spectrum between alt-right and on the other end of the spectrum, there's, I guess, Antifa. It's not a spectrum in my eyes. It doesn't look like a spectrum. It looks like a series of intersecting circles and intersecting communities. If you take video games as a community, people who like talking about video games and discussing video games and watching videos about video games are politically neutral. But it just so happens that a lot of people who play video games are also into the anti-SJW movement. So if we looked at video games, that probably encompasses a lot of PewDiePie, but it also has a lot of this. So, and this circle is, of course, even bigger than PewDiePie. If you imagine this is the edge of a circle, video games is huge. It's absolutely massive. I expect it's dozens of millions of people, maybe even hundreds of millions. I'm not sure. I see some people saying that video games are a gateway to anti-SJW, and that anti-SJW is a gateway to the alt-right, or that Jordan Peterson is a gateway to the alt-right for people who are just new to these things and discovering them. But it's only a gateway for this small number of people. Most of the people in the anti-SJW don't eventually end up in the alt-right. It's not a spectrum that they're sliding down towards alt-right, or down towards MGTOW or whatever, then they're just people, and some of them get to alt-right eventually. Probably they do get there through anti-SJW and maybe through video games, but that's not all of them, and it's not even most of them. It's anti-SJW as a community, I can't emphasize this enough, it's huge. It's so much bigger than the alt-right. Millennial Woes, he has, I think it's like 22,000 subscribers, and yeah, that's quite a lot. It's a pretty big community, I guess. It's like the size of a small town in England, but compared to anti-SJW, which is millions, and compared to Pewdiepie, which is 60 million, although I'm just going by rough orders of magnitude according to YouTube subscribers, but even if I'm off by a factor of 10, the alt-right is still nowhere near as big as, Shoe on Head, Chris Raygun, people with hundreds of thousands and up to 1 million subscribers. Jordan Peterson's got over 1 million subscribers now. Sean Head's got almost 1 million. Sargon of Akkad is an anti-SJW. He's hated by the alt-right. That doesn't stop him getting called alt-right by Joe Blogs over here, outside of all of it. But his audience is making up this huge percentage, and some of them probably do end up in the alt-right. But by some, I mean 1%. And by the way, it's people in here who are in a better position to get people out of the alt-right. It's not social justice feminist over here. It's not going to be the feminist off in their own feminist bubble, is it? The feminist bubble, by the way, is huge, bigger than Pewdiepie's. Feminists and SJWs, there's just no way they're going to be able to convince the alt-right to not be racist. The only people who can convince the alt-right not to be racist are the people who are closest to them. People like Pewdiepie and Jordan Peterson, and the people who understand their way of thinking but don't agree with them fully are going to have the most leverage to get people on the alt-right out of it. If that is your aim, is to get fewer racists in the world. The people who are closest to alt-right are going to be able to pull them out the easiest. And by the way, if we zoom into the alt-right, there's also sub-communities within that are, worse and better than each other. There's people who are white nationalists who just want a white nation free of other races, but there are also sort of more violent white nationalists who believe in getting that violently. And there's people who actually worship Hitler, actual neo-Nazis who respect what Hitler did and would like to do that again, or that sort of thing. There's sub-communities within here, and the people on the alt-right who are talking about race and white nationalism, they are in the best position to get these people out as well. There's a YouTube channel called Alternate Hypothesis who talks a lot about race and IQ and other heritable traits that he believes cause other races to be different from each other. And he's a white nationalist. He frequently talks about white nationalism, but he is not a Hitler supporter. He hates Hitler. He's incredibly critical of Hitler and the Nazis, and he claims that he's been able to bring more people out of the Hitler circle of the alt-right into regular plain flavour alt-right than anybody else. He says that he's been able to convince Hitler supporters to be just regular racist, and I guess if you're all the way over here, then maybe that doesn't seem like a big achievement to you because they're still on the alt-right. But I still believe that any movement away from Nazism is a good thing, and being out here and trying to convince people to come out of here and out of here, maybe, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think you can call people in SJW, anti-SJW, I don't think you can call Jordan Peterson alt-right when he's specifically taking people out of the alt-right. It just doesn't seem right to me. I think I've rambled on long enough now and my drawing's getting pretty messy, so I'm sorry if you're insulted by me drawing your bubble too small or not enough intersection between them. I'm just drawing this off the cuff. I've never even drawn a draft of this, but maybe this will help you understand the messy map of the internet that I have in my mind. Let me know who you think gets to define what alt-right is. Is it the people in the alt-right, or is it the majority of people who do not even understand the alt-right and what they stand for? If millions of people think I'm alt-right and the alt-right says I'm not, then do I have to listen to the millions? I don't know. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you again very soon.